Hurricane Newton making landfall near Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I'm Mike Naso from IPR's Tropical Video Update page on YouTube with the latest on the tropics and the Pacific, with a landfalling hurricane in Mexico, and the Atlantic with a couple of systems to track. And we've been watching the tropics as it's been active. It has been active. We dealt with Hermine. It was an Invest 99L, moved through all the way into the Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, through northern Cuba, became a tropical storm, then a strengthening Category 1 hurricane made landfall near St. Marks, Florida, and then moved up off the East Coast. And we were worried that it was going to be very close to the coast and potentially strengthen, and it moved far enough east to where it didn't quite have the impacts, at least not yet, that it looked like it could. You can see the trough interaction there, and not as much moisture with it as some of the computer models showed a couple of days ago, which is great news. Still has caused a lot of problems on the East Coast, ruined Labor Day for a lot of people with rainfall, certainly at least the early parts of Labor Day weekend. There's the hurricane making landfall right there in Cabo San Lucas on the left side of the screen. Hurricane Newton, that's going to bring moisture into the southwestern U.S. in the next couple of days. We have Invest 92L south of Hispaniola. It looks more foreboding than it actually is. There doesn't seem to be any real signs of any kind of low-level circulation or anything like that, but the moisture and storms that moved through some of the islands were pretty nasty. Martinique and different islands got hit pretty hard. There is an upper-level low that is shearing it, and if it does develop, I don't think it's going to become much of anything, and it'll likely take a track towards the Yucatan and maybe the Western Caribbean and Bay of Campeche. You can see a couple of waves off Africa, a good one here to the south, kind of too far south. It might pop up though, and another larger one leaving Africa. Computer models showing we could still have Cape Verde activity. I remember in the year 2000 we had Isaac, Joyce, Cape Verde storms off Africa, and that was the last days of September. So we're just in the first couple of days of September. There's a long way to go with this hurricane season. But let's start with Newton since it's making landfall as of 5 a.m. Hurricane Newton's eye was at 22.8 north, 109.9 west. Max winds were 90 as a high-end Category 1 hurricane, gusting as high as 115. Some reports so far winds as high as 108 miles an hour, maybe even higher. Not entirely confirmed yet, but certainly possible with a strengthening landfalling hurricane, and I'll show you that on satellite in just a second. It's moving north-northwest pretty quickly at 17. 979 millibars, you can see, is expected to retain hurricane strength and then eventually move inland over Mexico and be a tropical depression over Arizona. So we're going to see that moisture, and as a matter of fact, I wanted to show you some of the ensemble models just to show you. It's kind of interesting. They're showing the GFS ensembles showing as far inland as, say, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas Panhandle. They do see tropical moisture, but we've been dealing with so many models out in the Caribbean and things like that. I thought it's a little interesting to see some computer models showing the leftovers of a landfalling hurricane over Kansas. We're not in Kansas anymore right now with the hurricane hitting Mexico, and I'm going to show you the satellite imagery. You can see as I get it moving there. There we go. The eye closing off, definitely closing off there, and that deep convection wrapping right around the center of circulation. So you're going to have that back end. There has been calm winds reported near Cabo San Lucas as a very big ragged eye. That's an eye very typical of a hurricane around, say, 90, 100 miles an hour. And thankfully it didn't have more time over water to strengthen into a major hurricane like Odile did a couple of years ago. You can see, though, a lot of moisture pumping into Mexico, and you have the onshore flow, so some storm surge flooding, heavy rain, and hurricane-force winds impacting the Mexican coastline at this time. A nasty hurricane, and very rapidly forming. It reminds us that any time during hurricane season, even a 3-day vacation could be impacted by a significant landfalling tropical cyclone. So it's something to think about. Back in the Caribbean Sea, we have, you can see the UK Met model was run on Hurricane Newton and had it coming just about where it's coming, although they do take it more across the Baja. So even though it appears to be kind of dragging along the western side there, expect that northerly curve towards the mainland of Mexico, and that'll bring that moisture that way. The 92L models, the few BAMs that show it developing generally south of Jamaica towards the Yucatan, and even those that start to pull it north towards the Gulf Coast, look at what they do. They push it back to the west. More high pressure, very strong highs this year. That's what kept Hermine, or what became Hermine, so far west before it developed, and that gave it to Florida. Gave it to Florida for sure. You can see on the satellite imagery, our invest does not look all that impressive. The convection is bursting, although again, the rain showers with this, you always got to be concerned. Even if it's not a tropical cyclone, it could still cause heavy rain. It lashed the islands pretty good, although it has appeared to dry up and kind of consolidate into one blob right there. Look at this upper level low near Jamaica, fueling some wind shear that is just shredding our invest, not giving it any time to bubble. It is amazing what wind shear does to these developing cyclones, because if there was no wind shear, this thing would just be cruising along, spinning, and would likely develop into a hurricane in the western Caribbean Sea. It doesn't appear like that's going to happen, but we'll keep an eye on it regardless. And we're going to keep an eye on these systems too off Africa. You can see south here on the ITCZ, we got a pretty good wave down here, and we got another decent wave that came off the coastline, and more convection over Mexico behind that. Africa. It's been a long night tracking this hurricane. And more convection coming off of Africa. And again, the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, this time of year, we could see development. We saw a Cape Verde system from Hermine. I mean, Hermine's sitting there off of Cape Cod. It hit the Florida Panhandle, but it originated from Africa. So we have to watch these very carefully. The long range GFS at 0Z, look what it shows. It shows a hurricane roaring through the Caribbean in the longer range. Two systems actually. One moves out to sea. The other becomes a potent hurricane south of Cuba. And that would be by September 20th, 22nd. But that is the long range. Take it with a grain of salt. But it's an indicator that we could still have a lot of Cape Verde activity in the coming weeks. Thank you, by the way, tropicaltidbits.com, for those wonderful model maps. Everybody on the internet that follows hurricanes loves to go there. I'm sure a lot of you guys watching love to go there. Thanks for Levi's maps there. I appreciate it. A little shout out to your website there to help you out. So again, Hurricane Newton making landfall in Mexico. Hermine is definitely causing some high swells and other things off the East Coast. Not like it did with the storm surge in Florida. We're going to watch 92L. We're going to watch the waves off Africa. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much, guys.